All right, so in this video, we're going to continue with our Apache configuration work, and we're going to add a new virtual host. So if we were to leave our configuration settings as they currently are, we'd only be able to host one site here at a single IP address because Apache wouldn't know about any of the other sites we have. So in our previous video, we were working in the etc Apache 2 directory. And inside of this directory is a sites available folder or directory. So let's go into that sites available directory and take a look around. Now you can see we have two files in here. We have a default and a default SSL. For right now, we're going to ignore the default SSL and only concentrate on the default. So the default is going to handle any request that comes to our server that is not from a specific URL. So there's no server name up here. There's no server name directive. So anything that comes to the IP address or an unknown server name will get served by this default file. So now, if we want to add a new site to our server, all we have to do is copy our default file and we'll call it something new. So say I wanted to move my website here, ciardo.com. So now let's look. So now we have a new file called ciardo.com, and I'm going to go into that file and edit it. So right here, we are going to add a server name directive called ciardo.com. And anytime a request comes to ciardo.com, it's going to go into the document root of var www.ciardo.com. So in here, we will create this directory in www, and within that we can put our index files, and then our virtual host will serve files out of that directory. So there isn't anything else we really need to do, except we do need to update these directories down here, because right now they're only pointing at var www, but we want to make sure that these are also applying to our ciardo.com directory. And that's all we need to do. So you can also change the server admin. It might be a smart idea to change that as well. So now we have a new virtual host that will respond to ciardo.com, and when something comes in from ciardo.com, it will redirect to this document root, and also we've added this directory to our directory block here, and we've added these. Well, we haven't added them. They were here by default. We've added these options in here that will allow those files to be served from that directory. And the options, indexes, follow, symlinks, multi-views, these are just different default display options for Apache, and I've provided some explanation for those below. Allow override none. This means that we won't be able to use a .htaccess file, which we'll get into later, but that basically allows us to do Apache configuration from within our web directory. That has some benefits, but that also has some drawbacks, as we'll see later on. And we will have to make some modifications here, like if you wanted to host a WordPress blog or something like that, we would need to change that allow override. So that's all we need to do to our virtual host. So we can save this now. And you can see that we still have that file in there. So now we need to use the a2en site command. And we talked about this briefly in the lecture. But what we need to do is we need to tell Apache, hey, we just added this new file to our sites available folder, and we've put some new configuration in there, and we'd like to enable that. We'd like to make it work on the site. So we can use the a2en site command and then tell it the name of our file. So you remember, we named that file ciardo.com, and we did that for a reason. First of all, it makes this command make more sense. Apache to enable site ciardo.com, and it also helps us keep track of what exactly is in that virtual host. So let's see what happens when we type this. Okay, so it says enabling site ciardo.com. To activate the new configuration, you need to run service apache 2 reload. All right, we can do that. Service apache 2 reload. Okay, so we're good to go. Now if we go into sites available, we can see ciardo.com in there, and that's been added to our virtual host list. Now if we had DNS pointed at this server and we type ciardo.com into our URL, we could serve files to ciardo.com. We do have to remember though, we told Apache that there was going to be a directory in here called ciardo.com. So if you're going to do something like this, you need to make sure that you add the directory that you told Apache that you would add. And so we've added that here, and now Apache will be able to find that when it goes to serve those files. So the cool thing is that we can go into sites available, and we can copy and paste this default file over and over and over again, and add just as many, add more and more sites, and we can continue to run that A2EN site to enable them. We can also use the A2 dis site, which will disable the site. And again, we have to run our Apache reload to disable the particular site. So one last command that I want to go over with you guys is the A2EN mod. And what A2EN mod does is allow us to add and delete Apache modules, but we have to get them installed first. So most of the default modules that come with Apache are already enabled. So say we wanted to add PHP to Apache so that we could parse PHP scripts and run things like WordPress or other PHP programs that we've written. So we're going to let this install real quick. It should just take a second here. Okay. So now that we have now that we have PHP installed, we can go into the mods available, and we can see that we have our PHP 5 comp file there. So if we type A2EN mod, A2EN mod PHP, PHP 5. Well, we can see it's already enabled. Okay, so apt-get will enable that a module by default. If we wanted to disable it though, let me disable it, A2 dis mod PHP 5. Module PHP 5 disabled. Again, if you do a restart, and actually you'll notice here you have to do a restart on the modules. Apache has to fully restart to enable or disable those. You can't just do a reload. So if we go service Apache 2 restart, now the server's restarted without PHP 5, and we can re-enable it by typing the opposite. So these are tools that Ubuntu and Debian Linux have given us to help make Apache a little more easier to to modify and change. So at this point, you guys should definitely be comfortable installing Apache using apt-get. You should know where the Apache keeps its log files, and you should know where Apache keeps its configuration files. You should also be able to set up very basic virtual hosts using Apache, and you should be able to enable and disable those virtual hosts using the A2EN site and A2 dis site. And you should be able to activate and deactivate modules using A2EN mod and A2 DS mod. And it's also important that you understand how Apache uses modules and that they're essentially add-ons, bolt-ons to the core Apache system that allow you to add functionality to Apache. So in the coming weeks, we're going to use these a little bit more to do some more complex Apache configuration, and we'll also be working in lab that will allow us to use these virtual hosts to access our server. So that's it for this week, and please email me or contact with any questions.